When New York burns, 8 million people will run. They will not walk. They will not plan. They will run toward 10 small cities scattered across this continent. And 9 of those 10 will close the gates before the first refugee column ever reaches the city limits. Let that sit with you. 9 out of 10. I am Raccoon Survival. I am the one who stood on a ridge above one of these towns in October of last year and watched the sheriff mark the single road into the valley with a hand-painted sign. The sign said, "Residents only." The paint was not dry. The sheriff was not smiling. He was not joking. He was rehearsing. He was rehearsing for the day the cities die. Now, before I tell you which 10 towns I drove, before I tell you what I measured, before I tell you why I am almost certain that number 1 on my list will be the last functioning city in North America when the lights go out for good, I need you to understand something that every prepper blogger, every tactical influencer, every map with red arrows YouTube guru has been lying to you about for years. They have been selling you states. Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Tennessee, right-wing flags on a map. They tell you to pack your family into a minivan and aim at a state, any state. Just get out of the blue zone, they say. Just get red dirt under your boots. That is the prepper industrial complex. That is the voice of people who have never actually driven these roads, who have never stood at a single lane bridge and realized the whole town can be sealed by 2 trucks. Who have never looked at a town's water intake pipe and understood that the pipe is the throat of the entire community, and whoever cuts the throat owns every soul inside. The state-level advice is garbage. It is wallpaper. It is somebody selling you a promo code. Because even in the right state, 90% of the cities are wrong. They are death traps wearing the costume of safety. They sit on interstates. They depend on municipal water systems that die the instant the pumps lose power. They have populations over 100,000, which means they have bread riots within 72 hours of grid failure. They have one hospital that runs on a single natural gas line controlled from a call center in Oklahoma. You cannot run to a state, you run to a city. And of the 19,000 incorporated cities in the United States, I have personally driven, measured, photographed, and interrogated exactly 10. 10. That is how narrow the gate is. So today, I am going to hand you the list. But I am going to do something the Instagram preppers never do. Before I give you the cities, I am going to give you the doctrine. Because without the doctrine, the cities are just pins on a map. Without the doctrine, you cannot defend your choice at 3 in the morning when your wife is crying and your kid is asking why we are leaving. With the doctrine, you become unshakable. You become a resident. You become the person on the correct side of the gate. The last 3 cities on this list, numbers 3, 2, and 1. Those 3, the gatekeepers really do not want you to know about. The first 7, you will find scattered in old survival forums if you dig. But numbers 3, 2, and 1, I had to walk into a county clerk's office and ask for a land plat map printed on paper because the digital version has been quietly scrubbed. Stay with me. This is not a list video. This is a briefing. Class is in session. Here is the doctrine. I call it the 6-gate fortress criteria. Every city I am going to name passes through all 6 gates. If a city fails even 1 gate, it comes off the list. No exceptions. No sentimentality. No, but my cousin lives there. Gate 1. Population under 50,000. This is not about small town charm. This is about math. A city of 50,000 or less can feed itself through a combination of backyard gardens, local ranches, and barter within a 40-mile radius. A city of 100,000 cannot. The food math breaks. The social math breaks. A population under 50,000 also means the sheriff knows the troublemakers by first name. The town hall has a functioning volunteer network, and the decision-making chain is 1 phone call long, not 12. Gate 2. Water independence. This is the killer gate. This is the gate that eliminates most so-called safe towns instantly. The city must draw its water from a source the residents can physically walk to and physically defend. A well field inside the city limits. A river with an intake pipe that a man with a wrench can inspect. an artesian spring, a mountain aquifer. If the water comes from a reservoir 40 miles away through pumps run by a grid operator in another state, the city dies on day 3. No water means no city, period. Gate 3. Food independence. Within a 40-mile radius, the city must have working agriculture, cattle ranches, grain fields, vegetable operations, orchards, not hobby farms. Not farmers markets. Real commercial food production that can be converted to local distribution inside of a week. This is why some of the loudest, quote, fail. They sit in scenic tourist valleys with nothing but restaurants and gift shops. Gift shops do not feed you when the trucks stop. Gate 4, off the major highway. No interstate running through the city limits. This is the refugee filter. When the big city's empty, the refugee wave flows down the interstates. Cities on I-5, I-80, I-70, I-10, I-95, those cities will be overrun in the first week. The wave goes where the asphalt goes. A fortress city sits at the end of a state highway or a county road. It has one way in, maybe 2. It can be sealed by 4 sheriff's deputies with a concrete barrier. Gate 5, at least one hospital. Not a world-class medical center, not a university hospital, just one working hospital with a surgical team, a pharmacy, and enough diesel fuel to run the generators for 30 days. In a collapse, the city with no hospital becomes the city where a broken leg is a death sentence. The city with one hospital becomes the city people negotiate to join. Gate 6, armed culture. This is the gate the urban prepper never understands. It is not about how many AR-15s are in civilian hands. It is about cultural literacy around firearms. Do the grandmothers in this city know how to clean a rifle? Do the 11-year-olds handle a .22 at Thanksgiving? Is the local sheriff elected or appointed? Does the town have a shooting range that kids use for Boy Scouts? An armed culture is not measured by counting guns. It is measured by counting the people who know how to behave around them. In a collapse, an armed culture polices itself. An unarmed population with 1,000 panic-bought pistols polices nothing. It shoots itself by accident. 6 gates. Miss one, the city comes off the list. The multiplier rule says every piece of gear must do 3 jobs. The Fortress criteria says every city must pass 6 tests. Gear is easy. Cities are hard. Because you cannot buy a city on Amazon, you have to arrive at it, and arrive before the gates close. Now. The arsenal. 10 cities. I will go from number 10 to number 1. I will give you the numbers, the geography, the threat the residents are already preparing for, and the fatal mistake most preppers make when they think about each of these places. I will give you the multiplier, the 3 to 5 reasons each city survives when others die, and I will hand you the bridge, the thing that connects each city to the next in the chain. Number 10, St. George, Utah. Southern Utah desert, population approximately 95,000 across the metro, and I can already hear the complaint. That is over 50,000, Raccoon. You broke your own rule on the first city. Listen closely. The 95,000 is the metro. The city proper sits at about 43,000 within its real defensible footprint, and in a collapse scenario, the outlying suburbs decompose first. What remains is a core of 40,000 people on sandstone, with direct access to Quail Creek Reservoir and the Virgin River watershed. St. George draws its water from aquifers inside Washington County, not from a pump station 3 states away. The mistake most preppers make about St. George is that they look at the desert and think desert equals death. Wrong. The desert is the moat. Anyone trying to walk into St. George from Las Vegas, which is the nearest collapse source at 120 miles southwest, has to cross the Mojave in the summer or freeze in the winter. The desert is the gatekeeper. St. George sits on the friendly side of the moat, the multiplier on St. George. 1. Aquifer water. 2. A strong Latter-day Saints community culture, which builds in a massive food storage substrate. Many households carry a full year of food by religious tradition, not by prepping fashion. 3. A working regional hospital in the form of Intermountain St. George Regional. 4. An entire network of private ranches in the Arizona Strip and southern Utah that can supply beef and lamb indefinitely. 5. A cultural alignment on firearms and self-reliance that does not need to be manufactured. The threat St. George is already planning for is Las Vegas. The sheriffs in Washington County have tabletopped the I-15 collapse scenario more than once. They know who is coming up that highway when the strip goes dark. They know where to choke it. But St. George has a flaw. It is on I-15. Gate 4 is Arden's into a real blockade, or it fails. If it fails, St. George absorbs a refugee wave it cannot feed. That is why it is 10th. Solid fortress, one cracked wall. Bridge to number 9. If the desert is the moat for St. George, what about a city where the moat is made of mountains? Number 9. Fairbanks, Alaska. Population, approximately 32,000 within the city limits. Interior, Alaska. The threat that Fairbanks residents are planning for is not a refugee wave. The geography makes a refugee wave physically impossible. The threat is the supply line. Fairbanks imports 95% of its commercial groceries through a single road, the Parks Highway, and through air freight into Fairbanks International. Cut both, and the city has between 6 and 9 weeks of food on local shelves before rationing begins. The mistake preppers make about Fairbanks is that they look at the latitude and they look at the cold and they say, no one could survive winter there without industrial supply. They are wrong by about 200 years. The indigenous communities of interior Alaska have fed themselves through winters at -50 for millennia. The technology is fish wheels on the Tanana, moose harvests in September, and root cellars dug into permafrost. The gear stores in Fairbanks sell every one of those tools over the counter today. The multiplier on Fairbanks. 1. Moose and caribou protein at population levels that dwarf the human consumption rate. The subsistence harvest in the Tanana Valley alone could feed the entire city on meat. 2. The Chena River and the Tanana River as water sources that do not depend on pumps. 3. A genuine military installation at Fort Wainwright with a working hospital and a strategic diesel reserve. 4. A university with working greenhouses at the University of Alaska Fairbanks that are already running experimental subarctic agriculture. 5. A cultural and practical knowledge base around cold that no one in the lower 48 possesses. The dark side of Fairbanks. Winter. -50 for weeks at a time. If you have never lived through that, you will not last the first February. Fairbanks protects itself from refugees by being a place no refugee can reach. It protects itself from the wrong residents by being a place no wrong resident can endure. You either belong to the cold or the cold kills you. That is the second moat. The first moat is distance. The second moat is climate. Which is why Fairbanks is 9th. It is an extraordinary fortress, but the entry price in suffering and skill is so high that most people who plan to move there never will. Bridge. What if you want a fortress with a hospital and a university and a harsh moat, but without the -50? Number 8. Lewisburg, West Virginia. Population approximately 3,800 in the city, with Greenbrier County at about 33,000. Now, somebody will say the city itself is way under 50,000. Good. That is the gate. The county is 33,000. That is the functional fortress population. Everyone in Greenbrier County knows they are part of the same ecosystem. The threat Lewisburg is prepared for is less about refugee wave and more about grid failure. The Appalachian mountain ridges create a natural barrier against large population movements from the Washington, D.C. and Richmond corridors. Anyone trying to walk into Greenbrier County from the east has to cross the Allegheny Ridges. Possible, but exhausting. The interstate is I-64, which runs through the county and is a real vulnerability. But the terrain immediately north and south of the interstate is so steep that a blockade point at the Caldwell exit effectively seals the county to anyone without four-wheel drive and a map. The mistake preppers make about Lewisburg is that they look at the Greenbrier Resort, the famous bunker built into the mountain during the Cold War for congressional evacuation, and they assume the bunker is the point. The bunker is not the point. The bunker is a tourist attraction now. The point is that the federal government chose Greenbrier County specifically because of its defensible geography, its self-contained water, and its isolation from the DC metro area. That selection criteria was not random. It was a military evaluation. You are getting the same briefing the Pentagon got in 1958 for free from a raccoon in a hoodie. The multiplier on Lewisburg. 1. Spring and well water throughout the county. 2. Working small-scale agriculture, cattle operations in the Greenbrier Valley, apple orchards, dairy, hay production. 3. The Greenbrier Valley Medical Center in Ronsford with a functioning surgical department. 4. A gun culture that is inherited, not purchased. 5. A social fabric of church networks and family compounds that is almost impossible to infiltrate as an outsider, but is extremely protective once you are accepted. That last point is the key to Lewisburg, the social moat. It is the quietest moat. You can arrive with a pickup truck full of cash and never be a resident. Or you can arrive with a skill, a willingness to show up at the volunteer fire department, and a habit of being at the feed store on Saturday morning, and within 18 months, you are family. Which is why I rank Lewisburg 8th. The geography is strong, the hospital is real, but the social entry is long. If the collapse arrives before your 18 months are up, you are a refugee, even if your house is on the right side of the ridge. Bridge. If the social moat is the slowest, what about a city where the social moat is wide open and the geography is the moat? Number 7. Lebanon, New Hampshire. Upper Connecticut River Valley. Population approximately 14,000 in the city, with the Upper Valley region functioning as an interconnected economic zone of roughly 70,000 people across 2 states. New Hampshire on the east, Vermont on the west, split by the Connecticut River. The city itself is tiny. The fortress is the valley. The threat the Upper Valley is planning for is the Boston corridor collapse. When Greater Boston empties, the wave moves along I-93 and I-89. Lebanon sits on I-89, which is the single biggest strike against it. But I-89 in central New Hampshire is not the I-5 in California. It narrows, it climbs, it crosses snow zones. A coordinated blockade at the Exit 18 interchange, combined with the natural bottleneck at the Connecticut River crossing, effectively seals the Upper Valley from anyone who does not have four-wheel drive, tire chains, and a month of preparation. The mistake preppers make about Lebanon is that they dismiss it as too liberal because the county votes blue and Dartmouth College is 10 minutes away. This is the dumbest filter in the entire prepper community. The voting pattern of a town is a terrible predictor of its survival. What matters is infrastructure. And Lebanon has Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, which is a full Level 1 trauma center with a helicopter pad, a working organ transplant unit, and one of the largest rural medical workforces in New England. In a collapse, you do not care how the nurse voted. You care that the nurse knows how to run an IV line while the lights flicker. The multiplier on Lebanon. 1. Dartmouth Hitchcock, the single most powerful medical asset in any city on this list. 2. The Connecticut River and dozens of working wells. 3. An enormous surrounding belt of working dairy farms, maple syrup operations, and vegetable CSAs across the Upper Valley. 4. A skilled workforce, engineers, doctors, tradespeople, all clustered because of Dartmouth. 5. A cultural practicality that gets masked by the Ivy League label. These are people who split their own firewood in October. They just vote differently than the prepper blogosphere expects. Why 7th and not higher? Because of that interstate. I-89 is a vulnerability. If the blockade fails in the first week, the refugee wave comes up the river valley. The geography helps, but it does not seal. A second gate fortress, not a first gate. Bridge. What if you want the medical firepower, but with better highway insulation? Number 6. Fayetteville, Arkansas. Northwest Arkansas. Ozark uplift. City population approximately 95,000. That is above the 50,000 gate. Now pay attention to what I am about to say, because this is the kind of nuance the state-level map preppers will never give you. The Fayetteville metro area is a tri-city node, with Fayetteville, Springdale, and Bentonville functioning as a single economic ecosystem of about 500,000 people. At first glance, that breaks Gate 1 immediately. Too big. Refugee magnet. Disqualified. But the geography of Northwest Arkansas forces a different analysis. The Ozark Mountains on the south and east, the Oklahoma line on the west, and a sparsely populated rural belt to the north mean that in a collapse, the Tri-Cities do not fragment into refugee streams heading outward. They fragment into neighborhoods that can self-organize. The University of Arkansas becomes a logistical hub. Tyson Foods, which is headquartered in Springdale, is the single largest protein processor in North America. Walmart, headquartered in Bentonville, controls the largest food distribution network on the continent, and the regional distribution centers are physically located here. Listen to that again. The two largest food companies in the United States have their literal brains in this metro area. In a collapse, that infrastructure does not evaporate, it localizes. The people who run those distribution centers live in Fayetteville. Their kids go to school in Fayetteville. They have every incentive to keep the regional pipeline running for the Tri-Cities first, before they try to restore it to Dallas or Memphis. The mistake preppers make about Fayetteville is that they look at the population and reject it. They never look at who lives inside that population. The Tri-Cities are not a generic sprawl. They are the nervous system of the American food supply. That makes them something closer to a medieval city-state, a metro that carries institutional memory of how to feed itself. The multiplier on Fayetteville. 1. Beaver Lake as a water source. Massive, inside the metro footprint. Gravity-fed intake feasible in several locations. 2. Washington Regional Medical Center plus Mercy Hospital in Rogers. Both serious regional facilities. 3. Tyson and Walmart food infrastructure in the immediate vicinity. 4. An Ozark small farm culture with poultry, cattle, gardens, orchards. 5. A gun culture that does not need coaching. The threat is internal. A metro that large has internal crime decompression when the grid fails. That is why Fayetteville is 6th, not 1st. You survive Fayetteville by choosing your neighborhood inside the metro, not by choosing the metro. A house on the west side near farmland, different outcome than a house in the central dense corridor. Bridge. What if you want a real fortress but with no metro complexity, a clean, small, well-defined city? Number 5. Kingsport, Tennessee. Northeast Tennessee on the Holston River in the Appalachian foothills. City population approximately 55,000, just over the gate. And the just over matters less here because the city is geographically contained by ridges and rivers. Functional defensible population inside the ridgeline, closer to 45,000 in a collapse scenario. The threat Kingsport is planning for is the Atlanta corridor. I-81 runs north-south through the region, and a collapse in Atlanta or Knoxville sends a wave up I-81. Kingsport is not on I-81. It is off to the east on a spur. The city sits in a pocket that requires a deliberate turn off the interstate. The spur is the filter. Refugees following the interstate by momentum miss Kingsport entirely. Refugees who turn off at exit 59 know what they are looking for, and the sheriff's department in Sullivan County knows how to handle them. The mistake preppers make about Kingsport is that they assume it is a dying industrial town because of Eastman Chemical, which is the dominant employer. Eastman is not a liability. Eastman is an asset. The company has its own water treatment, its own power cogeneration, its own rail spur, its own medical clinic, and an industrial workforce of chemists and engineers who know how to run complex systems without an internet connection. In a collapse, Eastman becomes the beating heart of a local economy that does not need Amazon to function. The multiplier on Kingsport. 1. The Holston River and South Holston Lake as water sources, both within gravity feed distance. 2. Holston Valley Medical Center, a significant regional hospital with a helipad. 3. Appalachian agriculture, cattle, hogs, corn, tobacco, in a ring around the city. 4. Eastman's industrial base as a substrate for local economic restart. 5. A regional gun culture that runs from the Blue Ridge through the Cumberland Plateau. Why 5th? Because Kingsport clears all 6 gates cleanly. Not barely, cleanly. The only reason it is not higher is that 4 cities above it clear the gates even more cleanly, with even sharper geographic moats and even better ratios. Bridge. Let us go west. Let us go to a city that sits on the backbone of the continent. Number 4, Rapid City, South Dakota. Black Hills, western South Dakota. Population approximately 75,000. Yes, above the gate. Stay with me, because the geography of western South Dakota changes the math. The Black Hills are an island, literally. They are a mountain range surrounded by hundreds of miles of open grassland in every direction. The nearest population center of any size is Denver to the south, 350 miles through empty prairie. Minneapolis to the east, 600 miles. Billings to the west, 300 miles. Rapid City sits alone. It cannot be swarmed by a refugee column because no refugee column can walk or drive that far without collapsing logistically. The threat Rapid City is planning for is Ellsworth Air Force Base and the strategic value that makes the area a potential military target rather than a refugee target. This is a different threat profile than anywhere else on the list. Rapid City residents are not worried about being overrun. They are worried about being relevant. The mistake preppers make about Rapid City is that they think, South Dakota, cold, boring, empty, and move on. They miss that Rapid City has an industrial-grade water system drawn from Rapid Creek and multiple Black Hills springs, a regional hospital network anchored by Monument Health and the VA, a functioning agricultural base from the ranching counties to the east and west, and the second highest concentration of firearms per capita in any United States city with over 50,000 people. The multiplier on Rapid City. 1. The Black Hills as a defensive terrain asset. You do not invade the Black Hills, you negotiate with them. 2. Ranch country protein. Beef supply per capita is off the chart. 3. Ellsworth Air Force Base, which is a double-edged asset, strategic target, but also a massive logistics platform with fuel, medical, and engineering. 4. A real hospital network. 5. The Mount Rushmore tourism economy that has trained a service sector workforce in how to handle large population movements, skills that transfer in a crisis. Why 4th? The distance moat is the most powerful on this list. The population is manageable. The only reason Rapid City is not higher is that its winters are brutal and its growing season is short, which puts extra pressure on food imports or preserved food stockpiles. Now, we are entering the territory the influencers do not want you to see, the last 3. Bridge. What if you want the distance moat of Rapid City, but with a better growing season and an even smaller population? Number 3. Cody, Wyoming. Northwest Wyoming, gateway to Yellowstone, Absaroka Range, population approximately 10,000. Yes, 10,000, well under every gate. The threat Cody is planning for is Yellowstone tourism collapse and the potential seismic or volcanic scenarios around the Yellowstone caldera. Cody residents are not soft. They have been running disaster tabletops for 30 years because they live 40 miles from one of the largest active geological hazards on Earth. That means the emergency management infrastructure in Park County, Wyoming is at a level you will not find anywhere else in the 10. The mistake preppers make about Cody is that they assume the population is too small to sustain a hospital and too isolated to maintain services. Wrong. Cody Regional Health runs a full hospital with surgery, emergency, and a strong telemedicine network with Billings. The city has a small airport, a state highway patrol station, a sheriff's department that is, by personality, closer to a militia than a municipal force, and I mean that as a compliment, and a civic identity built around self-reliance that is not a marketing slogan. It is documented in the county code. The multiplier on Cody. 1. The Shoshone River and the North Fork watershed. Pristine, defensible, in-county. 2. The Bighorn Basin agricultural belt. Sugar beets, cattle, hay, barley. 3. Cody Regional Health as a real, functioning hospital. 4. A cultural alignment on self-defense that extends to grandmothers carrying revolvers without ceremony. 5. The Absaroka Wilderness as a fallback. 2 million acres of defensible mountain terrain accessible within 30 minutes. The dark side. Cody is small. If a wave does reach it, the wave outnumbers the residents 10-20 orally through city council meetings that nobody outside Park County attends. By the time a refugee arrives, the town has already legally defined who belongs. This is the dark truth the gatekeepers do not want generalized. There is a closing window. It is closing in ink, in county meetings, in real estate transfer restrictions, and it is closing in handshakes too. Who gets invited to the VFW? Who gets introduced to the sheriff? Whose kid plays on the Little League team? The social closure is happening in parallel with the legal closure. If you think you can show up in Cody on the first day of the collapse with a pickup truck full of silver and be welcomed, you are living inside a fantasy. Bridge. If Cody is close to perfect, what sits above it? Number 2, Bozeman, Montana. Gallatin Valley, southwestern Montana. City population, approximately 56,000, just over the gate. But like Fayetteville, the Bozeman case requires a closer look. The threat Bozeman is planning for is the opposite of refugee influx. Bozeman is planning for the fact that it has already been discovered. The Yellowstone television series, the California migration, the remote work wave. Bozeman is midway through its transformation from hidden fortress into known destination. Real estate prices have tripled, traffic has thickened, the social fabric is under strain. The mistake preppers make about Bozeman is the opposite of the mistake they make about most other cities. They look at the Zillow prices and they say it is unreachable, too expensive, for the rich. Move on. Here is why you do not move on. The things that made Bozeman desirable in 2015 are still there in 2026. The water is still there. The Gallatin River still runs through town. The Bridger Range still blocks the north. The Bozeman Pass still constricts the east. The ranch country still rings the valley. Bozeman Health Deaconess still runs a genuinely strong hospital with a surgical center and a cancer unit. Montana State University still produces a constant flow of engineers, agricultural scientists, and range managers. The multiplier on Bozeman: 1. Gallatin River and Sourdough Creek water. 2. Gallatin Valley agriculture: wheat, cattle, dairy, vegetables, greenhouses. 3. Bozeman Health Deaconess, the strongest single hospital north of Salt Lake City and west of Billings. 4. Montana State University, as a knowledge and experimental agriculture base. The university runs real research farms and animal science facilities. 5. Terrain moats on 3 sides of the valley. Why second? Because Bozeman combines geographic insulation, medical strength, agricultural base, and a population size that sits right at the edge of functional without tipping into unmanageable. The only reason it is not number 1 is that the discovery problem is real. In the year 26, Bozeman is visible on every __quote _7 _ list that the lazy bloggers produce. That visibility is itself a risk. Bridge. The visibility problem is solved by only one city on this list, and that city is where I would stake my own life. Number 1. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Northern Idaho Panhandle, on the shore of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Population approximately 56,000 in the city. Kootenai County, population approximately 175,000. Once again, on paper, The county population looks problematic. Stay with me. The threat Coeur d'Alene is planning for is the Spokane collapse and the Seattle-Portland Exodus corridor moving east on I-90. This is the single biggest vulnerability, and Coeur d'Alene is therefore the city that is thought the hardest about the single biggest problem. The Sheriff's Department in Kootenai County has trained more explicitly on the interstate interdiction scenario than any other department on this list. The Idaho State Police have coordinated with county sheriffs on exercises that involve I-90 corridor interdiction. The mental model is real, rehearsed, and written down. The mistake preppers make about Coeur d'Alene is that they hear the name, associate it with the infamous historical reputation of the broader North Idaho prepper scene, and either romanticize it or dismiss it. Both reactions are stupid. Coeur d'Alene is not a compound. It is a functioning small city with a waterfront, a hospital, an airport, a large tourism economy, and a professional civic class. It is also a city where the cultural baseline on self-reliance, firearms, and community defense is absolutely assumed. The multiplier on Coeur d'Alene. 1. Lake Coeur d'Alene as a water source, one of the cleanest, most abundant freshwater lakes in the continental United States, right at the city's doorstep, defensible from the lakeshore. 2. Kootenai Health, a genuinely large regional hospital system with over 300 beds, a trauma program, and a network of clinics across the county. 3. A food production ring in the Rathdrum Prairie, the Palouse to the south, and Montana Ranch Country to the east. 4. I-90 as a double-edged asset, vulnerability from Spokane, but also a functioning logistics artery that the sheriffs can choke. 5. A dense network of volunteer fire, militia-trained civilians, and church-based mutual aid groups that function as a parallel civil defense layer. Why number 1? Coeur d'Alene is the only city on this list that combines all of the following simultaneously. Large enough to have real medical and industrial infrastructure, small enough to be defensible. Water-rich, food connected to the Palouse and Montana, culturally armed at the grandmother level, and most importantly, it has already been thinking about the I-90 corridor problem for a decade. Every other fortress city on this list is planning. Coeur d'Alene is rehearsing. That is the entire difference between a fortress and a target. A fortress has rehearsed the gate closure. A target is about to learn for the first time. Now, step back. Look at the map in your head. Coeur d'Alene in northern Idaho, Bozeman in southern Montana, Cody in northwestern Wyoming, Rapid City in western South Dakota, Kingsport in eastern Tennessee, Fayetteville in northwestern Arkansas, Lebanon in the upper valley of New Hampshire and Vermont, Lewisburg in southeastern West Virginia, Fairbanks in interior Alaska, St. George in southwestern Utah. Do you see what I see? These 10 cities form a continental lattice. They are not randomly distributed. They cluster along the spine of the Rockies, the ridges of Appalachia, and the defensible pockets of the desert Southwest and the subarctic. Between them, these 10 cities cover every major American region except the deep urban coasts. They are the nodes. Any two of them can reach each other through backroad networks that bypass every interstate choke point. A supply caravan from Rapid City to Cody is a 7-hour drive on US 16 that never touches an interstate. A caravan from Kingsport to Lewisburg is 4 hours through back roads in the Appalachian spine. Lebanon to Lewisburg is a day along the Appalachian back route. This is not 10 isolated fortresses. This is a continental network. That is the synthesis. That is the thing the prepper industrial complex will never tell you. Because the influencers are selling you your town, they are not selling you the web. Once you see the web, you understand that relocating to any one of these 10 is not just choosing a fortress. It is joining a network. A resident of Bozeman and a resident of Coeur d'Alene are 9 hours apart by car, on roads that do not attract refugee traffic. They can trade. They can share intelligence. They can send a doctor. They can send a shipment of ammunition or insulin or wheat. This is the survivable America. 10 nodes, a lattice, a continent. Now the dark truth, the one I promised. I told you at the start that the last 3 cities are the ones the gatekeepers do not want you to know about. I have now given you all 10, and I have put Cody, Bozeman, and Coeur d'Alene at 3, 2, and 1. And here is why those 3 in particular are protected by silence. Because in all 3, the residency window is closing legally, socially, and economically. In all 3, county commissions and city councils have quietly begun restricting the conditions under which new arrivals can establish water rights, septic permits, building permits, and land use. In all 3, the social fabric has been tightening. The dinners you do not get invited to, the land that does not go on Zillow because it changes hands through handshake, the businesses that sell to locals and quietly say, not taking new clients, to out-of-state numbers. You were told relocation is a decision. It is not. It is a race. Every month that passes, these 3 fortresses tighten by one more notch. Every county commission meeting, another ordinance. Every month, the price of a modest home with water rights moves further out of reach. Every month, the social door closes a little more for people who do not already have a family foothold. The gatekeepers do not want you to know this because the gatekeepers already live inside the gate. For them, silence is strategy. The longer you believe that relocation is a choice you can make someday, the longer the gate stays quietly closable in their favor. I am telling you, the gate is closing now. In ink, in handshakes, in permits, in property transfers, in whispered, "not for you," at the real estate office. There are only 2 roles left in the story of American collapse. 1. You become a resident of one of these 10 cities before the sirens. You move now. You plant roots. You meet the sheriff. You show up at the volunteer fire department. You buy the small house with the well. You learn the names of your neighbor's kids. You become part of the fabric before the fabric has to defend itself. You do this in the next 18 months, not in the next 10 years. 18 months is the window. After that, the legal and social closure accelerates past the point where a new arrival can enter the network. 2. You stay where you are, in the city that is not on this list, and when the lights go out, you become a refugee. You pack the minivan, you drive in the direction of one of these fortresses, and you arrive at a hand-painted sign on a single-lane bridge that says, quote, 11, quote, and the sheriff behind the concrete barrier does not know your name. He does not owe you anything. He has a wife and 2 kids and a barn full of cattle, and his job is to keep the gate closed against you. There is no third option. The third option is a fantasy. The third option is the lie that kept you immobile for a decade. The third option is the gatekeeper's real product. Be a resident. Not a refugee. You heard it from the raccoon with one eye and a scar. You heard it before the sirens. This was the doctrine. This was the arsenal. This was the lattice. Class dismissed. And before you close this window, look back at the opening promise. I told you 9 of these 10 cities will close their gates before the first refugee column arrives. Every doctrine, every gate, every city, every multiplier you just heard was the proof of that single sentence. The gates are being built right now. Some in concrete, some in county code, some in a neighbor's memory of who showed up at the fire department. The question is not whether the gates close. The question is which side of the gate you are standing on when they do. Be a resident, not a refugee. The next briefing goes deeper. 10 death trap cities that look safe but kill you first. The anti-list. The cities on every Instagram prepper's safe states chart that will become mass graves in the first week. Cities you might be considering right now, cities you might already live in. If the fortresses taught you the shape of survival, the death traps will teach you the shape of the mistake. Subscribe. Notifications on. The next drop is darker. Be a resident, not a refugee. Raccoon Survival, out.